Did you ever wonder what happens when a movie goes too far? When it crosses that invisible line between art and outrage? The 1990s weren't just about sleek blockbusters and romantic comedies. Beneath the neon and nostalgia, a darker current pulsed through cinema, one that dared to provoke, shock, and push every moral boundary it could find. These weren't just movies. They were cinematic firestorms, banned, censored, or locked away in vaults for showing audiences what they weren't supposed to see. From stylized bloodbaths to twisted social commentaries, these 10 forgotten and forbidden films of the 1990s rewrote the rules of shock cinema and made history doing it. So buckle in, grab your popcorn, and maybe something stronger, because we're diving deep into a decade where controversy was an art form, and some filmmakers painted with gasoline. Let's start with the one that burned its way into pop culture and nearly got its director blacklisted. Natural Born Killers, 1994. There are films that mirror society, and then there's Natural Born Killers, a film that holds up a cracked funhouse mirror and dares you to look closer. Oliver Stone took a screenplay originally penned by Quentin Tarantino and turned it into a media fever dream, a kaleidoscope of chaos where love, violence, and television collide. Mickey and Mallory Knox aren't villains or heroes. They're pop icons created by a culture obsessed with bloodshed. When it dropped in 1994, the reaction was nuclear. The film was banned or heavily censored in multiple countries, including Ireland and the UK, for its graphic violence and supposed copycat influence on real-world crimes. In America, several theaters refused to screen it. Critics were split down the middle, half calling it genius, half calling it moral decay on celluloid. Did you know? Oliver Stone used over 3,000 separate cuts in the edit, blending animation, black and white film, and distorted color footage to mimic the chaos of TV news and consumer culture. The result was sensory overload, a cinematic panic attack wrapped in satire. But underneath all that madness lies the question that still echoes today. When violence becomes entertainment, who's really watching whom? Natural Born Killers wasn't just banned, it was misunderstood. And that might be the most dangerous kind of film of all. Man Bites Dog, 1992. Imagine a film crew following a charming killer through his daily routine, not to stop him, but to film him. That's Man Bites Dog, the 1992 Belgian mockumentary that blurred the line between satire and horror until no one could tell which was which. Shot in stark black and white, the film opens like a dark comedy, but quickly descends into nightmare territory. The crew grows desensitized to the violence, even complicit in it, capturing every chilling detail as if they're making a twisted home movie. The result? A gut-punching reflection on how easily entertainment feeds on brutality. When it premiered at Cannes, some walked out, others applauded, but no one forgot it. Many countries, including Australia and Sweden, banned or restricted it for extreme realism and moral corruption. In truth, the film wasn't glorifying violence. It was exposing our fascination with it. Did you know? The directors made the film on a shoestring budget, using friends as actors and real Belgian streets as their stage. The raw, documentary-style shooting made audiences feel like witnesses, and that's exactly what unsettled censors most. Man Bites Dog doesn't just shock you, it implicates you. It whispers, "You kept watching, didn't you?" And in that moment, the line between viewer and voyeur disappears completely. Men Behind the Sun, 1990. When Men Behind the Sun first screened outside of Hong Kong in the early 1990s, many theaters didn't even finish the showing. Audience members fainted, others walked out in silence, and critics were torn between calling it an atrocity or a masterpiece. Directed by T.F. Mao, the film depicted the brutal experiments conducted by Japan's infamous Unit 731 during World War II, but it did so with such unflinching realism that it blurred the line between documentary and horror. Unlike the exaggerated gore of most exploitation cinema, this one carried historical weight. Every scene felt too real. Mao used a stark, documentary-like style that left viewers trapped between shock and disbelief. It wasn't stylized horror, it was a mirror held up to humanity's darkest capabilities. Censors across the globe banned Men Behind the Sun almost immediately. Australia, South Korea, and parts of Europe refused classification, and even Hong Kong demanded severe cuts before allowing screenings. In Japan, it was outright banned for years. The controversy only deepened when rumors spread that a real cadaver was used in one sequence, a claim Mao has always denied, but one that only heightened the film's mythic infamy. Did you know? Despite the uproar, Men Behind the Sun was screened in classrooms in some parts of China decades later, not as entertainment, but as historical education. It's perhaps the only exploitation film in history to double as a history lesson. T.F. Mao didn't set out to make a cult horror film. He wanted to make people remember. The result was a cinematic gut punch so powerful it was mistaken for obscenity. To this day, few films have been so feared or respected for daring to show the unfiltered truth. Funny Games, 1997. Now imagine this: a bright, sunny vacation by the lake, a perfect family retreat, the kind of weekend you'd see in a travel brochure, but within minutes, the air turns electric, heavy, wrong. That's Funny Games. Michael Haneke's 1997 psychological powder keg that turned the idea of movie violence inside out. Where most films thrill you with suspense, Funny Games punishes you for wanting it. Two polite young men knock on a door, soft smiles, perfect manners, and what follows is an excruciating descent into control, cruelty, and manipulation. There's almost no blood, but the unease is unbearable. Haneke doesn't just show violence, he studies our appetite for it. When the film premiered, audiences were stunned. Some walked out in silence. Others accused Haneke of mocking his viewers, and they weren't wrong. He breaks the fourth wall, rewinds scenes, and even taunts the audience for expecting a happy ending. It's not horror in the traditional sense. It's horror about horror. Censors were split. Was it too disturbing for general release or too intelligent to ban? Many festivals hesitated to show it uncut. Haneke, however, stood his ground. His message was clear. The real brutality isn't on the screen. It's in the audience craving it. Did you know? Haneke remade the film shot for shot in 2007 with Naomi Watts and Tim Roth, proving the horror still worked, even in a glossy Hollywood frame. Funny Games isn't entertainment, it's interrogation. It looks straight at you, smiles, and asks, "Why are you still watching?" The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, 1989, 1990s release bands. Opulent, grotesque, and utterly mesmerizing. Peter Greenaway's The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover turned fine dining into a nightmare opera. Though technically released in 1989, its NC-17 rating and censorship battles carried through the 1990s, keeping it banned from major chains. The film's lavish visuals, crimson dining rooms, candlelit feasts, and surreal tableaus contrast brutally with its shocking content. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece of visual art, and others called it an endurance test. Did you know? Costume design was by Jean-Paul Gaultier, and the entire color palette shifts depending on the room. A feast for the eyes and the nerves. It's disturbing, yes, but also daringly beautiful. A grim fairy tale for adults who like their art with a side of outrage. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, 1990. Some films scare you for an evening. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer scares you for life. Based loosely on real events, this low-budget indie came crawling out of the Chicago underground like a dark whisper. Shot on grainy film and drenched in realism, it follows Henry, a man who kills without motive, emotion, or remorse. The Motion Picture Association refused to rate it for years, calling it too disturbing for classification. It was banned in multiple countries, delayed, recut, and still came out looking like a nightmare caught on tape. Unlike slashers that glamorized their villains, Henry stripped away the fantasy. There's no soundtrack, no escape, no charm, just quiet horror and unsettling calm. Did you know? Actor Michael Rooker's performance was so eerily convincing that he couldn't find work for months after the film's release. Casting directors thought he was genuinely dangerous. It's not entertainment, it's confrontation. And once you've seen it, you never forget it. Necromantic 2, 1901. Germany's Jürg Buttgereit built his reputation on testing limits, and Necromantic 2 was his magnum opus of discomfort. A direct sequel to his cult underground film, it's part love story, part body horror, part existential tragedy. It was seized by authorities just days after release, with censors claiming it glorified taboo imagery. Buttgereit fought the ban in court and won years later. But the controversy only fueled its legend. Necromantic 2 isn't about shock for shock's sake. It's about loneliness, obsession, and the fragile line between devotion and decay. Did you know? When the police confiscated the negatives, Buttgereit himself was summoned for questioning. The film was treated like contraband. It's grotesque, poetic, and surprisingly sad. A reminder that in exploitation cinema, even horror can have heartache. Tetsuo 2, Body Hammer, 1992. Cyberpunk. Body horror, industrial madness. Welcome to Tetsuo 2, Body Hammer, a film that turns flesh into metal and rage into art. The sequel to The Underground hit Tetsuo, the Iron Man. It expands the chaos. A man's body begins transforming into weaponized machinery as his anger spirals out of control. Censors in several countries banned or cut the film due to its relentless intensity and surreal violence. But beneath the rust and steel is a powerful allegory about dehumanization in the modern world. Did you know Tsukamoto filmed most scenes in abandoned Tokyo factories, using real sparks, smoke, and scrap metal, creating a nightmare that feels alive? It's loud, claustrophobic, and hypnotic. Part horror, part industrial ballet. Watching it feels like staring into the future of cinema. If the future was forged in iron and fury. Begotten, 1990. If cinema had a nightmare, it would look like Begotten. Shot in grainy black and white, the film opens with an unsettling symbolic scene that had audiences questioning everything, from their faith in storytelling to their faith in humanity. There's no dialogue, no soundtrack, just haunting imagery that feels unearthed from another dimension. Censors around the world didn't know what to make of it. It was banned outright in some countries, labeled too disturbing for television, and screened only in underground theaters. Did you know? Director Elias Merhige spent 2 years distressing each frame by hand, literally scratching the film stock to create its decaying, dreamlike texture. It's not a movie you watch, it's something you survive. And once it's over, you can't tell if you've seen art or been haunted by it. Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom, 1975, 1990s global bans. Though released in 1975, Salo continued to be banned and restricted well into the 1990s. The decade's home video market gave it new life and new outrage. Pasolini's final film reimagines historical cruelty as a modern allegory for corruption and power. Even decades later, censors in New Zealand, Australia, and the UK deemed it unfit for public release. The film's imagery remains infamous, not for cheap shock, but for its relentless depiction of obedience and control. Pasolini wasn't trying to disgust, he was trying to warn. Did you know many distributors refused to touch the film until Criterion released a restored edition, only to see it seized by customs in some countries? To this day, Salo divides audiences. Some call it art, others call it unwatchable. But one thing's certain, no one forgets it. So, there you have it. 10 films too bold, too raw, too real for polite society. Each of these stories pushed boundaries, not for cheap thrills, but to challenge what cinema could be. They made audiences uncomfortable, censors furious, and filmmakers unstoppable. In the 1990s, controversy wasn't a marketing gimmick. It was a statement, a reminder that film can disturb, provoke, and ignite conversation long after the lights come up. Did you ever notice how the most banned films end up becoming the most legendary? Maybe it's because they force us to look at the parts of humanity we'd rather keep off screen. So next time someone says a movie goes too far, remember, that's exactly how art evolves. If you enjoyed this journey through the dark side of cinema, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories Hollywood doesn't want you to remember. Because here, every reel has a secret, and some secrets never fade to black.